One reason CAD programs are superior in efficiency to hand drawings is their ability to reproduce line work rapidly. Most designs have line work that is repeated, especially in architectural design. If an architect wants to design an office building, why would they draw and redraw and redraw the same chair, sink, window, or door when in CAD all you have to do is copy it? That's where the use of blocks come in. Let's open up the annotation file for this chapter. In this file, you're going to see some examples of blocks, some of which we've used in other sections. Go to the Model tab. Here we have some blocks of some bushes or trees. Here we have some blocks of chairs, blocks of windows, and blocks of doors. Some of these are regular standard blocks, while others are what's called dynamic blocks. Blocks are a group of objects combined to form one object. Each part is still intact and can be manipulated, of course, but only while in the block editor. Otherwise, they act as one object. This allows custom shapes and designs to be made and to act as one object. If this chair wasn't a block, then we would have to grab every bit of line, object, ellipse, arc if we wanted to do anything to it. Now I can use the move command and I can move this chair very easily. Blocks can be made out of any AutoCAD object. This chair here is made up of arcs and ellipses and some lines. When I select it, it acts like one object, and all of them are on the layer that it was inserted on. Also, when selected, the block only has one grip, as you see here. That's the insertion grip, and I can move my block by that grip. Every block has an insertion point. Now, the objects in a block can be created on any layer inside the block. If they are drawn on layer 0, then they will take on the properties of the layer that they were inserted on. Like this block here is on the chair layer, but the objects inside it are on layer 0. So keep that in mind. If objects are drawn on a specific layer inside a block, they will retain that layer's properties regardless of what layer the block is on. So keep this in mind when creating blocks. This is one of the reasons every drawing has a layer 0. Blocks are meant to recreate objects quickly, like the chairs and the doors that you see here. They can be copied, rotated, scaled, moved, erased, and more. They can be saved, inserted, and used again. You can export them as their own file so that you could use them somewhere else with a WBlock command. And it's also a good practice to create a block library somewhere. That's a folder where you have all of your blocks saved in it. Organize it with subfolders so that you know what they are. Like make a subfolder of furniture, so all of your furniture can go there. Make it whatever it is that you need. You can keep it there and you can organize it so that you can find them and use them in future drawings. If you make a block for a project that you're working on, it might be a good idea to save that block in your library, because if it was important enough to make for this one project, it might come up again and you might be able to use it. Another common use for blocks are title blocks on drawings. A lot of companies will set up a block that is their title block. It makes it easy to control, to manipulate, and it keeps it on the drawing the way it should be and the same way all the time. Now let's learn how to create a basic block. There are several different ways that you can go about approaching the creation of blocks in AutoCAD. Any drawing can be used as a block, so that means you can start a new file and draw your block there. That's one method. Then later you insert that file with the insert command, and we'll go over that in a different video, and then that's how the block is now in your drawing. Or you can combine different objects in your current file and make it a block inside that drawing file. Then you can also export that block as a file to be used later on. Let's start with a blank file. Go to the templates, pick AutoCAD.dwt. And let's draw a chair. Let's keep it simple. Just make it basically square, and overall dimensions don't really matter. So let's say that's the seat, and let's make a back and then some arms to it. This is just a chair that we're going to look at in a top-down view. So I just drew a couple of rectangles, big rectangle for the seat, smaller one for the back, and then two here for the arms. extremely simple. We'll get the idea that it's a chair. So let's save this file. Let's call it chair. So this is our chair drawing. We just made our first block. Now, if you wanted to create the same block but keep it inside your file, use the block command. So just type in block on the command line, press enter, and you have the block definition window. You can also go to the Home tab on the ribbon and go to the block panel. And here you have several different options. You can insert one, you can create, you can edit a block, or you can look at some of the different attributes of your block. That's what these all have to do. We'll talk about attributed blocks in another video, but right now we want to create a block. So we're going to use the create command. This brings up the block definition window. Every block needs a couple of things, and that is a name and an insertion point, and it also needs the objects. So let's give it a name. Let's call it chair. Now we need to pick a base point. Select that button and then find an appropriate place to insert your drawing from. I'm going to pick the midpoint of the back of the chair. So that is the reference point for this block. Now we need to specify what objects are going to be. We can select them by picking that box and then just simply selecting all of the objects that you want in the block. Now you'll get a little preview. And that's it. Make sure your units are set up the way you'd like. I'm going to match these with inches. And when you're finished, click OK. And when you're done, that should make that into a block. It's really that simple to create a block. Now, if you want to export a block that you just made into a folder, you have a couple of options. You want to use the wblock command. That's a wblock. Press enter, and you get the right block window. Now, you can do this in a couple of different ways. You can select the objects and create a brand new block, just like we created our chair block. You can select the entire drawing, or you can pick a block that's already in your file. We already made the chair block, so that's what I'm going to select. Browse to the folder where you want to save it, and then click OK. And that exports your block out. I'm going to cancel this because I don't want to override this file. Keep in mind that a good practice to follow when creating blocks is to draw the contents of the block on layer 0. When a block's contents are on layer 0, they will take on the properties of the layer they're inserted on. Otherwise, they will retain their properties of the object's layer. Now, drawing your blocks on layer 0 gives you more options when displaying your blocks. You can use the same block, but have it drawn differently without having to redraw it or change it in any way. Otherwise, you're going to have to draw a different block for each way you want your chair to look. So let's say we're remodeling a room and we have multiple existing chairs that our client already owns that they want to incorporate into their design. They want to save some money this way. It's great. So you have a couple of layers. Let's make a new layer. I'm going to call it old chair, and I'm going to make it a gray color. I'm going to make another layer. I'm going to call it new chair, and I'm going to make it red. Okay, I'm going to copy this chair a couple of times. Now let's say these 3 chairs are the old chair. So I'm putting them on the old chair layer. Now let's say these chairs are the new chairs. They are on the new chair layer. I very quickly and very instantly know what's old and what's new. And I can do that because I drew all of my line work originally on layer 0. So now the properties for my chair will take on the properties of the layer they are inserted on, and not for the original layer or color or line type of what the object was drawn in. So this is a really cool thing that will reduce the number of blocks you need to use and increase the value of the blocks you already have. Having blocks and making them are the first steps in using blocks. The next step will be inserting them into your drawing. Let's start with a blank template file. Any template file should be fine, but I prefer that you use the acad.dwt template file for this. Now, to insert a block, it's very easy. You use the insert command. You can just type it in, insert, or you can type in the letter I, Or you can go to the Home tab on the ribbon, go to the block panel, and click on the Insert button. Now, if you have a block inside your file already, you click on this arrow, and it will be listed here, and then you select it. Since we have no blocks here, we have to browse to one of the files on our network or on your computer or on a disk, something somewhere. I'm going to browse to the chair block that we made in an earlier section. So I find it, here's the chair, click open, and we have a couple of options here. Now we have to either uncheck this or check this. This is the insertion point. This is the set of coordinates where our block is going to be inserted to. Now, if you know exactly where it's going to go, then you type in those coordinates, but the majority of the time you're going to want to specify that on screen. Also, you can change the rotation or the scale of your block. Typically, you're always going to go with a 1-to-1 scale. Now, if you know that the block has to change in size, maybe you're doing something from inches to feet or to millimeters, you may want to make the scale automatically right there. Or if you want it to be rotated, typically though, these are going to be left alone. You can always scale it and rotate your block later on. Once you have these options selected, click OK, and then insert your chair, and there it is. So our chair block needs to be updated a little bit because we need this insertion point to be at the back, but you get the idea. Now our chair is in our file. Once inserted, you can use the insert command again, pick enter, go through the list of blocks that are Blocks can be used for several purposes. As we saw, creating a simple block is not that complicated, really. Editing a block is also quite simple. Let's open up the annotation file. Go to Model Space, and let's start by inserting a block. Just type the word insert, or go to the Insert button on the ribbon. And let's select the chair block. Click OK. And this is the chair block that is in the file right now. And insert it somewhere over here. We'll move it over a little bit more so we can just see the chair. Blocks are used to be able to create and as well as to be able to change objects very quickly, especially line work that is repeated, like the line work for this chair. Now, if you need a second type of chair, then you have to make a second chair block. The nice thing about having one chair style is that if I edit the chair block, and once I do edit the chair block, then every place where we inserted that block will be updated instantly. We don't have to go back and change each chair and update it one at a time. So if I made a change to the chair block, every instance of this chair block will instantly update and change to match. To edit a block, you can just double click it. That will bring up the Edit Block Definition window. Now keep in mind that this only works for blocks that don't have attributes or text built into them that you can edit. Now we'll cover attributed blocks and how to edit them in a different section. Now there are two main ways to edit a block. You can edit the block through the block editor or edit it in place. If I cancel this, and if I select a block and I right click on it, you get to those options very easily. I can edit the block in the block editor, or I can edit the block in place. Editing a block in place allows you to edit the block as it exists in your drawings relative to the surrounding line work. Sometimes this is important and necessary. Let's look at the block editor first. In either case, you select your block and then right click it. Now pick the block editing mode that you want. In our case, it's going to be the block editor. Now the block editor environment looks a little bit different. It has contextual ribbons and some block authoring tool palettes. The background will even change slightly in color. Now there are far more options to block editing than what we have time to cover, like dynamic blocks and geometric and parametric constraints. But for now, I want to make sure that you're comfortable working with static blocks. Now the block editor opens up the selected block in its native state. This is how the block will look when we insert it into a drawing. Now, we make changes to the line work just like we would to any other drawing in AutoCAD. It allows you to edit the block without any other objects getting in the way. So let's change this chair just a little bit. let's change this back. Let's bring it in a little bit so it's a little bit more thin. And let's erase these arms just to get rid of them completely. And draw some lines connecting them all together. And also, let's select everything. Open up the Properties palette. You can close that tool palette for right now. And let's change everything to layer 0. Because that's good practice. And let's extend the backs of these curves so that they actually touch the back of our chair. Now, after you've made your change, when you're done, click up here in the contextual ribbon. Up here on the far right, close Block Editor. AutoCAD will ask you if you want to save the changes or discard them. In this case, we want to save. This is our updated chair block. And if we look over here, all of these blocks have been updated as well. So we changed the entire layout, every chair in our drawing, updating only one block. I want to show you how to edit a block in place. If I select the chair, right-click, Edit Block in Place. And it's going to ask you and verify that that's the block you want to edit. Click OK. And as you can see, everything else kind of fades back. Now, I can pick these lines. I can't do anything to them. They're just there as reference. But I can make changes to these objects just like I normally would. So if I need to know this chair has to be so wide according to this wall or located to something specific, then that's great. I have all these reference points and I can get to it. Now when you're done, come up to the ribbon tab and click on the Save Changes or Discard Changes if you don't want to save anything that you changed. Click OK, and you're back in your regular drawing state. Or you can type in Ref Close, R-E-F-C-L-O-S-E. Now to get into that mode also, you can type in Ref Edit to get to it. But typically I'll just do a right click. I don't have to remember the command, it's always there. Blocks are great tools that enable us to recreate similar line work in a rapid fashion. They can also contain metadata in what is called attributed blocks. A block attribute is a label or tag that essentially attaches data to your line work. Some examples of using attributed blocks as data could be part numbers, prices, comments, names, cost, manufacturer, or anything really. When a block is created, you can add text to it, but that doesn't make it an attribute. You have to add attributed text to the block. They're distinctly different. Attributed text in a block can be edited and extracted. They can also be visible or invisible. When an attributed block is inserted into your file, you will be prompted to enter in data values that will be stored with that block. Some attributes can be constant or uneditable, like a part number or name, for example. Let's open up the attributed block example file. This file contains an attributed block that has been inserted as a title block for this drawing. It's right here. So you can see when I hover over it, it looks like it's a block. When I select it, there are a lot of different grips in here. That's for the attributed text. This item here that says prepared for, that's just regular text. I can't edit it or change it or do anything to it. Now to edit the attributes of a block, you can double click it. That brings up the Enhanced Attribute Editor window. Here you can edit the text to display what you need it to. We drag this to the side. Here you can see this attribute has a tag. It's called Plan, and you're prompted with a plan name number 1 and the value. Plan name or value here is the actual text that is displayed in your drawing. To edit that, I click in this box here, and I just change it like I would in any regular text editor. I'm going to call this drawing title. When you're finished, click OK, and you've changed the text in your title block. Title blocks are very commonly used with attributed text. This allows everyone's title block to be formatted exactly the same way and give your drawings a uniform look. Now here's a quick tip. If you only want to edit one field of data, hold down the Control key and double click on that text field. When you're finished, just left click somewhere off on the screen. Now if you double click it, this gives you access to everything here that you can change. I can call this sheet title as an example, which is right up here. I can say whatever I want it to be. When I'm done, press enter. Client name, I can just say ABC Company. Click OK, and you can see here that I've changed some of the information on it. Now let's say, for example, I only need one of these lines. That's easy enough. Put a space in there, and now it looks blank. Now to create an attribute in a block, you have to create an attribute definition. It's sort of like creating text, only there are a few more definitions to assign. So let's edit this block right here. So select it, and then right-click on it, and go to the block editor. I'm going to close this because we won't really need that. It'll just going to get in our way. Each one of these objects here are attributed text. If I double-click on them to edit them, I get these three options. I have the tag, the prompt, and the default. The default will automatically fill in this information for you so the user doesn't have to. It's sort of a placeholder. When you're finished, just click OK. Now these have grips so that I can position them however I'd like. And if I want to create a new block attribute, I just come up here to the attribute definition in our block editor ribbon. So this is the attribute definition. I have a lot of different items that I can pick from here, like justification, text style. I can make it annotative or not. I can change the text height. Mostly what you're going to do is enter in your tag, prompt, and your default information. So let's say I want to make a tag for location. Now, a lot of times you're just going to enter in the same thing, location, location, location. Now, when I click OK, it wants to know where I want to put it. I don't really have a spot for it in my line work. I'm just going to put it right over here, just for now. And that's where it is. Now, you can also look at the things like layer, size, etc. Now, let's select any attribute. I'm just going to pick the one that I just created. Right-click on it and select the attribute order option right here at the top. Now, this window opens up the attribute order window. This will allow you to edit the order the attributes will be listed when you edit the data fields of an attributed block. Now, it doesn't physically change them in any way, just the order in which they're listed. So I put in location last, so it naturally goes to the bottom. But let's move it up after the client names. So I'm going to put it up here. So I select it, and then I click the Move Up button. Click OK. And when I'm finished, I'll click the Close Block Editor button. Save the changes to the title block, and you'll notice it doesn't look any different. Where is my location option? Well, there's something that you have to do when you edit an attributed block. You have to use a command called Batman. No, I'm not making it up. It's BATTMAN. It stands for Block Attribute Manager, or Batman. Once you open up Batman, find the block that you just changed, this title block, and then click the Sync button. And that will update every instance of the attributed block in your file. Now, I would wish that it would do this automatically for you, but it doesn't. So you have to do that every time. Don't worry, it will be there. Now we can edit our location right here. Now, if something like this happens in your attributed text, just double-click on your attributed block, find the tag that you want to change, go to Text Options, and you have some abilities here to change a few things. You can change the justification, and that might move it. You can change the text height. You can even change the rotation. You can make it annotative or not. You can even change the width factor. There are a lot of times when I've shrunk the height inside something just to make it fit better. It happens. You can also change some of the properties of it right here as well. When you're finished, click Apply and OK. So that's attributed blocks. And a very common use of an attributed block is a title block. Sometimes you need to take an existing block and modify it into a new block. Now, the explode command can help. Let's open up the annotation example file again. Now, the explode command explodes a compound object when you want to modify its components separately. That means it breaks down the object like a block into its basic objects. You can also use it to explode a polyline to break that polyline up into its regular lines and arcs. You can also explode multi-line text, making each line of that text single-line text. Go to Model Space. Once you explode something, the objects can be edited now outside of the block, leaving the other block instances in the file alone and unchanged. Other objects that can be exploded include dimensions, polylines, regions, etc. Now, if we wanted to make a second chair block design in this drawing, but wanted to retain the original chair, then insert a new chair block, we can. I'm going to use the insert command. I'm going to look for our chair. Found it in our list. Click OK. Then I'm going to insert it here. Now I'm going to explode this. You can just type in the command, explode, or type in the letter X for explode, or you can go up to the Home tab on the ribbon, go to the Modify panel, and here's the Explode button. Now select your object, press Enter, and that object is no longer a block, but it is the individual parts. Now, unfortunately, these parts can't be put back into the block. If I want the chair back, I'm going to have to either just undo this, and as you can see, my chair is back, or I'm going to have to erase it and reinsert my chair block. So be careful. There are only a few times when you really want to explode a block. That's when you no longer want the line work to function as a block, or when you want to use the block as a base for maybe a new block. So let's make a new chair design. Let's erase these arms, and let's put in square arms. Just something real simple. Put it in here. Trim up the line work, and let's mirror these arms. Make sure everything is on layer 0. And now we have a new chair. So let's make it into a block. Type in the word block, press Enter, give it a name. We're going to call it Chair 02. We're going to pick our base point, which is going to be the rear of the chair here. And now we select our objects. Click OK. And now we have a new chair block. So now we have options. When we go to insert a chair, we have chair, or we have chair 02. And that's our new chair block. So that's one reason and one good use for the explode command. Well, let's open up another file. Let's look at the attributed block example file. I'm going to show you what happens when you explode an attributed block. This is where the explode command can get kind of hairy. So we have some items in here, but let's make something a little bit different. I'm just filling in some information so that it won't look exactly the same. Okay, now that we have this, I'm going to show you what happens when you explode an attributed block. Go to the explode command, select it, and press Enter. Wait a minute, where'd all my text go? You see, that's what happens. It loses the values of the attributes and refers back to, if I double click on here, it refers back to the tagline that you inserted or typed in when you created that attribute definition. So remember that. And the only way to change this text now is to edit this here. Now notice something, I put spaces in there. A tag cannot contain spaces, so keep that in mind. Be careful when you explode a block, especially an attributed block. You could lose important data. Let's undo this. I'm going to copy this block just so that we can see the original. I'm going to copy it one more time. I'm going to leave this one the way it is. I'm going to explode the bottom block. But what happens if you need to explode this title block, but you want to retain all of that information that's in there? Well, you're in luck. You can use the burst command. Type in the word burst, press Enter, and then select the block. Press Enter again, and look, it looks the same. My drawing is great. It doesn't look like this. When I double click on this, it's actually single line text. So the burst command is extremely similar to the explode command, only that it will retain the text values that you put into your attributed blocks and will convert it to regular single line text. You use the explode command to get the basic elements of a block, but you use the burst command to get its data. Blocks are very useful, as we have seen. Now, we've looked at static blocks and attributed blocks. Sometimes the static blocks are just called blocks. Now, there's another type of block called a dynamic block. A dynamic block is extremely flexible and has intelligence built into it. Don't worry, they're not smart enough to take over the world, but they're very useful. Now, they can easily be changed to display different line work very quickly in a drawing. Now, they make it so that you can customize one block instance to fit different needs. For example, if you need a door that is 30 inches wide, you would have to make a block with a 30-inch wide door. Then say you also needed on the same project a door that's 32 inches wide. Well, you would have to create a second block and make it 2 inches longer. Now you have 2 blocks. Well, what if your client decides, I don't want that to be 32, I want it to be 30 again? Well, you can change that very quickly with a dynamic block. Your dynamic block can be designed to fit multiple needs, but with only one block. This keeps your block library smaller and more manageable. It also makes your blocks more useful since one block can fill many needs. Let's take a look at our annotation file. It has a few dynamic blocks in it. Go to the Model Space tab. Now, a dynamic block reference can easily be changed in a drawing while you work. You can manipulate the geometry through custom grips or custom properties. This allows you to adjust the block reference in place as necessary rather than searching for another block to insert or to redefine the existing one or to have to create brand new line work altogether. So let's look at the door at the bottom corner of this building that we see here. This door block is a dynamic block. You can see here that it has a lot of different fancy grips on it. These grips are typically customized when the block is created. Let's go over some of these. You'll notice that when you hover over the grip, it will give you a bit of a tooltip. It'll tell you what it's going to do. This sets the angle of the door opening. When I select it, I have different options. I can make the door closed. I can open it up 30 degrees, 90 degrees, 45, etc. Very useful. This grip right here sets the wall thickness. All I have to do is drag it up or down. You can see on the left, it changes from 4 inches to 5 inches to 6 inches. And the line work even changes. This button here aligns the block. It acts sort of like the standard move. This button here will set the direction of the swing. It opens in or it opens out. It's a toggle switch. This is very similar. This will move the door in or out. And then this grip here will change the width of the door. I can stretch it out to 3 foot 4 inches or all the way into a very tiny door of 2 feet wide. Just press escape to let go of that. All of these door block instances that you see here are the same block. It's very useful and helps in your design process. Now the window block next to these doors over here is very similar. Now it looks very simple. It looks like just 3 sets of lines. When I select it, I get similar grips to what I saw before. This will flip it back and forth from side to side. This changes the width. This relocates it to somewhere else. And this changes the width. This one is the thickness, depending on your wall. So you can see here, these blocks are very neat, very useful, and they can help out quite a bit. Now, AutoCAD comes with several dynamic blocks already made. If you open up your tool palette by pressing the Control key and the number 3 at the same time, you'll get access to a lot of them. This is the door and window dynamic block that's already in this file. Now, when you look at this tool palette, you can tell if a block is dynamic or not because it has that little lightning bolt in it. Here's an elevation view of a door. I'm going to insert it, select it, and here I can change the width, I can change the height, and I can flip it to the left or to the right. And here I can move it around. Very simple, but yet it adds a lot of different dynamic abilities to it. If I go from this architectural tab, I go to the mechanical tab, you can see here I have a lot of other shoulder screws and anchor rods and things like that. If I select this shoulder screw, I can change the length of it, I can change the size and the style. So you can see here, there are a lot of different types of screws that I have available to me in one block. Dynamic blocks are great to use. and they are a little bit more complicated to edit and create. If I select it, right click, go to the block editor, you can see here I have all of these different constraints set in my block. They control the input and the output that the user will have when they interact with the dynamic block. We don't have the time to go over these in this training video, but I wanted you to be aware of dynamic blocks and their usefulness. Blocks help us reuse line work in our drawings. For this chapter's project, we're going to use the project template file that we worked in before. We've already set up layers, dimension styles, and text styles. So if you haven't done that already, you need to go back and make sure you've done everything in order already because we're adding to it. We're going to add 2 blocks into the file. So open up your project template file that you created earlier. I create a typical one to start with and then a final version as well so that I have a before and after example file available to you to use. I'm going to save this into my current project folder as the before. So I've saved my file. Now let's open up the tool palette. Remember to do that, you press Control and 3 at the same time. Let's go to the Architectural tab. Find the window block. It's the window Imperial. They have 2 versions of most of these blocks out of the box, an Imperial version and a metric version. They're exactly the same thing, but one is set up for metric units and the other one is set up in inches. We want the Imperial window version. Left click on it and insert it. So there's the window. This will insert the block from the tool palette into your file. You can place it anywhere for now. Now let's do the same thing with the door Imperial. Select it and then insert it. And we're going to use these 2 blocks in this file in a later project. Now the chapter projects are adding all these features, as I said earlier, so make sure you're keeping up with them. We're slowly adding to your skill set and developing a file at the same time for later use. This is the same type of process that you'll use when you create drawings in the real world. Now let's go get the chair that we had worked on in our annotation example file. So go to Annotation, click Open, and from anywhere in the file, we're going to W block out our chair. So type in W block, that means right block, and we're going to select the chair block. So pick the block option, go to Chair, and then click here to browse. Now this is going to save our file where we need it. So go to your project files, wherever you've saved them at, and I'm going to overwrite our chair file that we created earlier. Click OK. I'm going to replace it. And so now we've exported our chair block. Let's go back to our project template file, go to Insert, and now browse to where our chair file is. Open it up, click OK, and insert it. Now, I don't like the way this chair is because it's not on the right layer. So I'm going to select it, right click it, go to Block Editor. Very simple. Select all of it, go to the Home tab, click on the layers here and click 0. Press the Escape key. I'm going to close my tool palette and I'm going to click on the Close Block Editor, Save Changes. There, now we have the right block in here and it's drawn on the right layers. Now we need to create a new block, one for our plant. So let's make sure we're on layer 0 and we're going to draw a circle. And you can draw this anywhere. Start the circle command and make the radius 6 inches. Now let's offset it by 1 inch to the outside. Now let's draw a polyline from the center. And you can just draw it straight up. Just draw it out about 12 inches up. I'm going to turn off my ortho now. And what I'm doing is I'm drawing the center of my leaf. Just make it look something like that. Make it squiggle. Now let's offset it again by 1/2 inch, 0.5 to one side and then to the other. Select the center and erase that line. Now that we've offset our center line, let's just make some sort of leafy looking shape. I'm going to use a polyline. I'm going to start from here. And I'm going to come out. Put it in arc mode. so that it has a little bit of shape to it. I'm going to mirror this about the center line of the circle, turn on my ortho, and then finish it with an arc. Turn off my ortho, just sort of eyeball it. Doesn't have to be perfect. This will get us what we need. Now I'm going to use the array command. I'm going to use a polar array. I'm going to select these objects, press enter. I'm going to array it about the center. And let's change this to 5. Close the array. Now we have a really big plant. Let's make this all into a block now. So type in the word block, press enter. Let's call this block plant. We need to pick our base point. That's going to be the center of this circle. Now we're going to select the objects. I'm going to pick all of that there. Press enter. There's our preview and OK. There's our block. Let's right click on it, block editor. Let's use the trim command. And let's trim all these lines. I can't trim them because they are an array. So I'm going to explode the array, and now they become the regular lines. I'm going to trim them about this circle and clean that up. Close the block editor, save the changes to plant, and there we go. Now our template file has a door, a window, a chair, and a plant that we're going to be able to use later on.